questions, make sure you go in the group chat at the bottom. You let us know. We're going to make sure we take care of it. My name is Joey Blades. I'm from Rochester, New York. I've been doing hair for about 13 years now, and today we're going to do some barbering, classical look with a modern touch. So first thing we got to think of is the shape of the cut, right? I want to be doing a mid-drop fade, and it's going to be a skin fade. So I want to make sure I keep it dark here, drop down around the occipital bone, come back up here, and then we're going to blend it all into the top. Starting out, I'm going to use my 1.5 guard and make my border. So I'm coming up to the crown area. I'm going to make a guideline that drops down. Not all the way down. This is just our border. When I do this, I'm making sure I have a straight, crisp line. When you make a guideline, you want it to be nice and definite. You don't want it to be squiggly and not in there good. You want it to be nice and clean, definite all the way around the head. 1.5 guard. Willie, we got any questions?
So far, so good, buddy.
All right. Now that that's done, anything I do above this 1.5 line will only be with shears or clipper over comb, but mostly shears. So coming in, I have my 1 guard open with the lever all the way open. I'm going to make the base for my fade. This is going to be the darkest part of my fade. I'm going to clean up the best I could. So when I go in for my fade, I make nice, clean, definite lines, and I have an even gradient of color. The important thing when you're doing a fade is that the shade or the gradient of the actual fade itself is balanced and even. We don't want it to be dark, light, dark, light. No, we want it to be light, medium, and dark. It's the most important thing that it's consistent. So I'm coming around the head. I'm cleaning up my surface for what I'm about to do. All right, so now we know everything about the haircut. We got our 1.5 guard, our open 1, and now we're going to make our baseline for the skin fade. The actual shape and direction of the fade is going to start here now. So we're going to use the clipper all the way closed. Natural fade point, we're doing a regular fade, is where these 2 points meet right here. We're going to drop it down about halfway because it's going to be a drop fade. We're going to bring it right here around the ear, down to the occipital bone. And it's kind of weird that I say occipital bone because everyone's occipital bone could be different on the head. It could be lower, could be higher, but naturally you want to do it down towards the nape area for a better generalization. You see my guideline. I'm making sure it's clean and consistent all the way around. I'm not etching it. I'm not scooping out. It's going to be a consistent guideline all the way around the head. That's going to be my base for a balanced fade. So once I've done that, I'm going to take my trimmers or edgers, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to clean up underneath the closed blade of the clipper. We're going to knock the bald out first. Some people save it for last, but then if you put your line in with the trimmers like this and you drag down, you're going to have a harder line of demarcation that's going to be harder to get out. So I like to come and I like to shave it out first without adding any new lines. All I'm doing is cleaning the bottom, bringing it to this closed blade here without putting any new lines in it. as you see, it's just cleaning the canvas of what we're working on. I'm not changing anything. I'm not adding any new lines. I'm not taking any lines away. I'm only taking the hair to the bottom, bald. My system that I use, it has a few more steps, but it doesn't add unnecessary steps. You want to make sure you're working smarter, not harder. That's the main thing. Willie, we got questions?
All good so far, buddy. Looks great.
All right. Everyone on this class, there's no such thing as a dumb question. If you have something you want to ask and you're worried about asking it, I promise you there's probably 2 other people wondering the same question that are just as afraid to ask it.
Gary's on. He says hello. Del Nero.
Gary, how are you? You're going to see me going with my comb throughout the cut. I'm going to consistently comb it because I want to make sure there's no hair that I've already cut laying in the head. I want it to keep a clean work surface. I know what has to be cut, what's already been cut, and what doesn't need to be cut. So now we got 3 levels. We have skin, open 1 guard. Some people can call it a 1.5. And then we have the 1.5 guard itself. And we don't know what this is. This has to be cut with shears. So now we're going to break this down. I'm going to come with my open blade on my clipper. I'm going to start working into this bottom part to starting the fade. I'm not going to make sure I go too high. I want to keep it low because I want to drop around his head. So I like to use a basis, open blade. I like to go the length of the blade itself. Or you could even do a 1/4 inch. That's usually a good basis to go from. I'm going to make a subsection. We'll say a 1/4 inch all the way around. Consistent, not higher in some places, lower in others. It's going to be the same thickness all the way around the head. Everything we do with this haircut, we want to be consistent because the end result of the haircut itself is going to be consistency. Fade's going to look balanced, it's going to look clean. It's going to be tailored to his head.
So small flat strokes here, correct?
Yes. I'm not scooping. I'm not raking. I'm coming straight up. I'm coming straight back down. Straight up to the line. Make sure it's all even. If you start moving your wrist and doing other things, this hair is not going to all be the same length. It's flat to the head, the blade itself. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, some clippers have these little notches, some don't. I'm going to close the blade 1 notch, just a little bit, right? I'm going to come in. I'm not taking any lines away. I'm not adding any new ones. I'm slowly cleaning up this subsection I just made. I got my borders. This is my skin. This is my open blade. I cannot go above this line with anything smaller than an open blade. You have to make sure of that. I call this part the cleanup. Slowly cleaning up the surface of what I just did. So when I go on with the smaller blade, I'm going to start to take the line out itself. So if I just did 1 notch close, the next thing I'm going to do is bring it halfway open. Close 1 more notch. It's a half blade. I'm going to come in. I'm going to start now, not with the whole blade itself, with about half the blade. I'm using corners a lot too. Now I'm starting the blend itself. So now I'm going to make sure I stay within the subsection. I'm only going to go halfway up in the subsection itself because the top part of it is going to be that 1 notch close.
Still with the blade flat on the head, correct? No C, no scooping, no raking.
Nope. So I'm using about half the blade and I'm turning it as I go. So I'm using the corners more now. It might look like it's flat. I'm sorry. Does it look flat?
It does, but you answered the question, so that's great.
I'll accentuate the corner more now. The more comfortable you get with clippers, you can actually keep the blade flatter and only hit the corners. Learning, you might have to tilt it some and really use the last 2 corners, but I like to use like the last 6 teeth of the blade itself. Personally, everyone has their own way of cutting. This is just my way that works for me. And it might work for you. After this class, my goal is not for you to do the exact same thing I just did on this whole haircut. My goal is for you to feel more comfortable and take at least one thing from this class that helps you. My techniques itself is a blend of a lot of other barbers' techniques that I took and made my own, tweaked them a little bit, made them work for me. How it works. So now this is my half blade, right? I'm going to come in and close it 1 notch above a closed blade. So now I'm going to use the middle of the blade and I'm going to flick up. So I'm going to make a C shape. Flick out right as I get into the half blade. Some people go open half close and they do more flicking, but that leaves room for error. You can actually go in and whack too much hair when you don't want to. So I like to go through my whole blade and create that smooth gradient. This is virtually faded. Some people would keep going to the next step, but I like to go through my first step, which would be my closed blade. And I like to go through and just add that extra little whip out at the bottom to make sure it's completely blended. So if someone's got an area on their head where they have a bone that sticks out, obviously you wouldn't use the whole middle blade because you might hit the part that dips in and create a hole. So I'm going to use the corners around this pronounced bone right here to make sure I don't put any holes in his hair. When I fade, a lot of times around sideburns, the hair tends to be coarser. I like to stretch the skin to make sure I cut it all evenly. Not like that for everyone. Something you have to judge on your own. Figure out if it's necessary or not. All right, so now I'm going to cut my closed blade. Make sure I'm only whipping the bottom of it. I'm not cutting anything into the rest of the faded section because then I'm going to have to restart the whole thing. I like to use the corners for this because if I use the whole blade, it leaves more room for error to actually raise up the fade itself. We don't want to do that. Any questions out there, Willie?
You're answering them with what you're doing with the blades, buddy. Nice work.
All right, so if I got my closed blade, everything without a guard's done now. from the trimmer all the way to the open blade, half blade to the closed blade. In the comments, what do you think is the next step? Someone answer it. I know this is an open one guard. This is a closed blade and everything above it. Will, we got anyone in the comments or?
Not yet. You might ask the question again.
I'll just go through it. So now, what I'm going to do, take my one guard, half guard. Yeah, great. Aaron, good answer. Come with the half guard. You can go up. I like to fade up and then down. So depending on the hair type itself and texture, I might go with my half guard and bring it up and then fade into it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work down. So I want to keep this dark. I want it's going to be a darker mid fade. I'm going to blend this down first. So when I go with my half guard, it's just going to be a quick flick, and that's going to be it. So I'm going to take my open one guard, close it one little notch, slowly going to come in. And now I'm making a C shape, and I'm flicking off of it. I'm not putting in a new guideline. I'm slowly melting this into the bottom of the fade itself. When I'm working on keeping a fade darker in certain areas and maintaining a shape to the head, I like to fade down more than up. Now I will alternate and go up and then down, not everything down, but I tend to keep the darker spots faded down. It leaves less room for error in taking the fade too high. That's definitely a possibility. So as you see, I'm not making any new lines. It's not erasing anything else in a crazy aggressive manner. It's just cleaning up what I'm going to do next. Right? So now I'm going to take it halfway close. Do the same thing. I'm going to keep going all the way till I get to a closed one guard. This way when I come with my half guard, it's just going to be effortless. That was halfway. One more notch close. Same thing. Cleaning up my surface. Not making any new lines. Slowly cleaning up what I'm going to do next with the next guard. I'm going to do my one guard all the way closed. So now I'm going to take my half guard. I'm going to go all the way open because, like I said, I like to fade down. So it's not going to make any new lines. It's going to slowly connect the half guard to the one guard. With this, I'm going to be scooping out again, making the C-shaped scoop. Don't be too worried when you're trying this. You're gonna look and it's not gonna really be much of a visual difference. You're gonna think you're not erasing nothing, but what you're slowly doing is tightening up the hair into the fade. As long as you hear the clippers cutting, it's working. So now I'm gonna go with my blade closed one notch. I'm going to keep working into this bottom. Each time I go, I'm going to slowly make the area I stop at a little lower and a little lower and a little lower until I get to the very bottom.
So the importance here is taking your time and being consistent with where you start and where you stop.
Yep, 100%. If you do it to one side, you must do it to the other. Don't rush one side trying to make it look super blended, and then the other side, you take your time, because this side, you're going to have to go back and fix it anyway. You want to make sure you stick to the system, and at the end, it's going to work out. I see with a lot of newer barbers, they don't really have a system yet because it takes years to develop one. So they sit there trying a million different things to blend out one line. And then they end up at the end picking one and fixing it. Maybe try a different system every haircut, but with one haircut, try one system and do the cut with that system. Don't try multiple systems in one cut, because you end up getting lost in the haircut and you'll be there forever. So now, half guard, halfway closed. Slowly coming back up into the fade now. Because now with the half guard, halfway closed, there is room for error, and there is a chance I can bring it too high. Because up in here is what? The one guard itself open at the top. So if I just did half, I'm going to do one notch closed and slowly work my way into this line itself. Now we're starting to erase it. Now we're starting to see results. We're seeing the line disappear. We're seeing the fades slowly blend together. Now on the bottom, you can see the gradient in the color of the fade dropping down versus being up high on the side. Why? Because I kept consistent guidelines and slowly meld them together. Stick to the plan. So now I'm going to go with all the way closed, and I'm only hitting where I see the darkness of the remnant of the line. It's the only part I'm hitting. I'm not going up high, staying right here. This is the important part, that you don't go too high now. I'm only using the corners, right? I'm going to use about the last 4 teeth of the guard. I'm just going to rub that away. I'm not flicking off crazy, but I'm just letting the clipper leave the head. And slowly brush that line away. Got any questions, Willie?
No, sir.
Cool. Most important thing is that you understand that everyone's hair is different, the texture is different, the shape of the head is different. You can have a system, the same steps might not work for every single haircut. You might have to do certain steps a little longer, put a little more work in versus others, but as long as you understand that everyone's hair is different, you'll be able to create the looks that you need to do without struggling. You just have to figure out what works for what textures. If you just have curlier hair in the sides, maybe I do some stuff with the grain to lay the curls down before I come up into it, but his hair's only curling on top. Now that I've done it with the closed blade, My favorite part is the cleanup. I'm going to take the very last guard before I put a guard on there, open blade. Now I'm coming in only with the corners. I'm just smoothing out that fade. I'm not coming crazy into it because I could take a chance that I whack some hair up in here. I want to come in and slowly let the clipper leave the head. Only where I see it's necessary. I'm not going through the whole thing and making a whole new line. Only where I see it's necessary. Some people call it spot fading, but you go in only where you need to. So the next move I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to cut the top. Some people will try and blend this and cut the top last, but that doesn't make sense because we don't know how long this is. So we need to put definite length on it. Then we can connect all the rest to it. The important part is that you know what you're connecting to. You know what you're fading into. You know every length of the haircut itself. That's our fade. Now, me personally, I don't like the hair to be sopping wet when I cut with shears. I like it to be more damp because I like to see how the hair lays when it's dry. I'm going to use my pro line, and it's going to be the two-tone swivel because I like to use swivels when I cut on top so I don't have my elbow up. I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut the top. The important thing when you cut the top is that you're not grabbing the whole thing and just chopping it. I like to do about a little less than a 1-inch subsection. I like to go through and cut my length, make sure it's all even. You take what you want to cut, comb everything else forward, comb what you want back into your fingers. I'm not passing that second knuckle because things get scary. I'm gonna go through, my arm down, relax, my wrist straight. I'm gonna cut the length that I want. The best thing about a swivel is that if I had a regular shear, I'd be like this and my wrist would be bent and I'd be cutting the top. After a couple sections, my arm's gonna hurt really bad. So I use a swivel. It's better for ergonomics. Come in, make that cut. So as I'm going, I want to make sure I pick up a little hair from the last section I just cut, and I'm going to cut it with the rest of it. Make another, we'll say 1/2-inch subsection. Comb what you're not cutting away from it so you don't grab it. The important thing when you're doing these subsections, we're not over directing hair from the front to the back. What's going to happen, this hair is going to be longer, this hair is going to be shorter. I want this all to be even. Straight on, come in and make my cuts. Another 1/2-inch subsection, all the way till I get to the front. You got to make sure you're pulling the hair up 90 degrees off the head, right? So if the head's round, highest part here gets lower, we pull it out this way. For the front, we're not going to be pulling it straight up because the hair grows down. So we're going to make sure we pull it out. Everything's going to be 90 degrees from the head and make sure we get a uniform cut. Any questions, Willie?
Pretty quiet crowd today.
Hopefully I'm answering their questions as they think of them. If you're in the crowd and you use swivel shears already, drop a thumbs up. And if you don't, what are you waiting for?
I know you're not looking at the screen, so you got some thumbs up.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear.
I'm ready to cut some hair after this tutorial.
Why do we only go to the second knuckle? It's simple. Shears, wrist fingers, they always win. Every single time, I promise you. There might be times where you grab your finger and don't cut it yet. And, oh my God. But I promise, 9 out of 10 times, you're going to get your finger good. And I'm speaking from experience. So as long as you're doing half-inch subsections, consistently clean cuts, there won't be much cross-checking to do because you've done pretty neat cutting. If there is, you go through, you cross-check anyway. It's always best to have a second opinion.
Do you find there are any benefits from cutting back to front versus front to back on a haircut like this?
It's more of a habit I don't know. It's a habit I got from the years of cutting the front too short from the beginning. So now I'll set my guide of what I want the length to be, and I'll work towards the front. Because there's been lots of times where I've cut the front too short, get to the back, and the hair is really long and doesn't style how I want it to. It's just part of my system, I guess. But for sure, it definitely benefit other people because it's safer to go that route. So now when I connect this, I want to make sure you look at the head shape, right? Right here, it makes a square. I want to go through and knock the corners off of that square all the way around the head, right? So I'm going to comb it back. You're going to see it. You're going to see the length on top, and you're going to see the length on the bottom, what you want to cut it to. We're going to cut off this little corner. That's going to blend everything in from the top to the midsection. We're still going to have a liner on the head, but that's going to be a quick couple snips, and that'll be it. Scissor over comb. So when you're looking, it's going to almost look like your fingers. You're going to have the top length here and the bottom length. What I want to do, cut those off and get that consistent length all the way around the head. Good. So if you look now, the only line we have is the very bottom line. This is all connected all the way to the top. This is all faded through here. I'm gonna come scissor over comb, a little bit right there, cut that off after. I'm gonna make sure I go all the way around the head first. This side, not so much because we're doing a comb over. I really don't want to cut this too short. So I'm gonna come right here where the subsection starts. It's important to walk all the way around the head because that keeps that consistent guide that your rest of your fade follow. I've seen a lot of haircuts that had a great fade until it hit a number 2 guard. And then you could tell when they got to the scissor part, or the shear part, they got lost in the haircut. So now I'm going to use my Monarch. This is a 6 1/4 inch. For me, that's a happy medium when it comes to scissor over comb. So I'm going to come through, and I'm not combing into the hair because then I'm going to start creating more lines. All I want to do is blend this line that's left over from the fade and the scissor work. So I'm going to find the guide of the actual fade part. Once I see the hair disappear behind the comb, I know that that's my guide. I'm going to come up. I'm only going to cut what sticks out, and I'm going to let the comb leave the head. I'm not chasing it into the top. It's going to leave the head and only cut that strip around the head. It's important that you're not chasing a line. All you're doing is slowly blending one line from two different gradients. We got dark, we got our medium color.
Could you do this with a texture shear?
Sure, you could. So what I like to do with the texture shears, I like to do my fine detailing. Now the thing is, let's see what we got here. We have a 30 and a 40. So if you see, we got 30 and a 40. In the comments, which one do you think will cut more hair? The 30 tooth or the 40 tooth? Leave the answer. I will answer the question in a second. But with texture shears, I like to go through and put my blends in with my straighter blade shears because it's a definite cut and I know what it is. The texture, what I like to do is soften up dark spots, or if it's real poofy, I like to deflate it. I don't like to actually do my blending with texture shears. I like to do my fine detailing with it. You got any answers? Which one cuts more hair?
We'll give them another minute because I think there's a delay in people answering as well. There's a delay with the video and with them answering.
So the 40 tooth is going to have finer teeth, and there's going to be less space between them. My 30 tooth is going to have less teeth, and they're going to be a little bigger, and there's going to be more space between them. So that could be something you base your answer off of.
Anyone else want to take a stab? What removes more hair, a 40 tooth or a 30 tooth?
When you look at it, you got to think of what fits more hair in between the teeth itself, 40 or 30. You got less gaps, more gaps. No stabs.
We have one person who said 30.
30 will cut less hair or more hair?
I think the way you worded the question was what cuts more hair, 40
Okay.
or 30?
All right, so no. The 40 is going to cut more hair. There's more teeth and there's more spaces for the hairs to fit in. So for the sake of the question, I'm going to come in with my 40 tooth. I'm going to do some fine detailing to some lines I left in there on purpose. So you see the 40 is blending that area quicker and more efficient because it has more teeth and it's going to be more aggressive when I come in to fade the hair. Now, if I use my 30, the 30 puts more of a texturized look.
Yep.
And breaks up more chunks of hair, but it doesn't remove as much bulk. Let's see. still a line. This line's gone, but it's still a line here. But you can see it's more texturized. I'm going to come in with my 40 again. I'm going to get rid of that one. This is part of the fine tuning. I mean, I typical day, I'm going through with my regular 6 1/4 Monarch and just fading it all the way through with my straight blade scissors. But there's some people's hair that's more coarse and more stubborn for me. So I'll go through and I'll texturize and fine tune it with my texturizing shears. Preferably, usually I use a 30 tooth or a 15. If I want to remove a lot of bulk, I'll go with my 40. So there's that. Let's see it. I'm going to work through again my Monarchs and slowly blend this up. I want to make sure I'm not digging in to the meat of the section here. I want this to stay dark and I want to maintain the shape without going all the way into the curvature of the head itself. Remember, I'm not digging the comb in. I'm only gliding the comb above the surface of the cut hair already. I want to cut any new hair. I only want to cut the hair that I missed when I went through with my clippers. Didn't really miss it. I left it there. Most important thing when you're doing a drop fade is that you leave this back part dark and you maintain the shape. If you go too high in here, you lose that whole shape of your drop fade. You want to make sure you keep it dark and you keep the weight up in here.
I'll admit early on in my career, that was one of the things I always did is I would take too much off at
Boom.
Yep. And then it would be flat.
Yep. So then you got everything else. You got it weighted in the sides, and it gets real high in the back. And when that is, you just have an inconsistent fade. Inconsistent. There are certain instances where you have clients that want crazy stuff and make sure the client's happy, I guess. But I've seen a client get his hair cut on top with the clippers and the sides only with texturizing shears. So he's got like a 4 on top and the sides are like maybe the equivalent of an 8. But unless they ask for you to flatten the back of their head, make sure you maintain the shape and you try to build a nice clean fade. So if you watch, anywhere this comb goes, my shear goes. Keep my bottom blade there, and it goes everywhere it goes, no matter what. I'm not barking with my hand with the scissors. I'm only moving my thumb. That's the most important part. You gotta know which blade cuts. You make sure it does its job.
How long does this haircut typically take you?
What time is it? I'll tell you right now, 1:40.
We've been going about 45 minutes, but I
Uh,
don't base that off of what you really do in your shop, because you're talking and you're
oh
teaching
yeah,
all
yeah,
the time
for
today.
sure. So if me and Mitch get talking, we might take an hour. If we're not, if I'm in a rush, I'll be done in a half hour. If I'm really in a rush, I could be done in like 20 minutes in reality. But either way, the thing is, since I've used the same system on his hair, what I've been cutting hair 4 years. Yeah, for sure. So I use the same system every single time. So it's not that I'm skipping anything. It's just that I know what I'm doing. And if I need to get done quicker, I just move my hand quicker. The system stays the same. So I always get the same result time and time. Now, if I was in a rush and tried to use a new system, thinking it's faster, I'll probably end up taking longer than I should have. As you see, now it's faded, but I left some weight around here. I want to make sure I come over with my 30 tooth and just shatter some of that up. This way the hair moves freer and doesn't have as much heaviness. So I like to come with my shears horizontally or vertically and just break up some of that weight. I'm not changing anything crazy. I'm not putting no new lines in. All I'm doing is making the hair move more freely inside there. And it's not all about speed. Don't let me sit here and tell you I'll do a cut in 20 minutes and you think that's what you have to do. That's not. The thing you have to focus on is making sure every cut is consistently the best quality you can put out to your ability. And if you're brand new and your ability is not what you have in mind, you work at it and you make sure that you keep giving every cut your all. And after a while, they'll be coming out flawless and you won't have to tell people you cut hair. They'll ask you when you have an appointment. Hopefully you say you're booked. That's the goal. The goal is to have the money chase you. Now you see this hair moves more free now. I can comb it around and it's just going to lay whatever way I want it to lay. It's not going to only lay in one spot. So, most important part. Not the most important, but the edge up. Depending on where you live, the edge up or shape up is very important to the haircut itself. All I want to do is go through and sharpen up the hairline itself. I'm not making anything skinny, pushing it back. I'm only going in to the natural hairline and making it a little more crispy than it is. So using the corner of my edges, I use it like a pencil. Tons of names for this area. I like to call it the turn. Some people call it a C cup. I don't know, a million names. I call it the turn. So we're gonna come in, keeping the sideburn wide, and we're just gonna make this a nice smooth C shape. You go to both sides. What to do to one side, you must do to the other. I'm ambidextrous, so I use my right hand on this side. It's not something I've naturally been born with. I noticed that if I was coming left-handed on the right side, I'd have to be in some awkward positions and it would not come out as consistent if I learned how to use both my hands. So starting out, when I started out cutting hair, I forced myself to cut hair with my right hand. This way I can do more of a consistent job on both sides. So now I'm going to comb this down. I'm going to go from the middle, go straight over on both sides. I'm not going to use the razor today because I'm going to ask for the video. Because I know a lot of you maybe don't have a barber license. You might only be cosmetologists. So I'm going to do everything with just my edges. Try to make it fair for everyone in the class. So when I do this, I make sure I keep my edger level. I'm not turning it up. I'm not turning it down. It's staying level, like it's on a rail and it's going side to side across the haircut itself. Once you start turning your clippers, that's when lines start to be not straight. So now I'm gonna come make this field goal post, what we'll call it. That's what a lot of my clients call it. Coming in, keep my clippers straight. I don't want to turn it in. I don't want to turn it out. I don't want to keep it high up top and then come out at the bottom. It's going to be nice straight. Use the line of the clipper itself. You may use the corner of the blade to get hairs that you missed, but you're still keeping that same line as you go up. Clipper doesn't turn, stays in one spot. There's that. Now we're going to do the other side. There you have it.